Imagine this. You've given everything to your country, served in silence, and come home only to watch a handful of bullies in polo shirts and cheap badges try to control your life. That was me, a retired Navy SEAL who thought moving into a quiet neighborhood with my daughter Emily would finally bring peace. I couldn't have been more wrong. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. It started small. Letters stuffed into my mailbox from the HOA about Emily's flower trellis. They called it unauthorized construction, a trellis. Meanwhile, half the houses on the block had bigger structures in their yards. I ignored the warnings at first, didn't want to make waves, but then the fines came. $200, $400, threats of liens on my property. So I went to the monthly HOA meeting. At the head of the table sat Karen Mitchell, the president, designer sunglasses indoors, smug smile glued to her face. To her right was Mark Benson, their so-called security director. He was ex-mall cop at best, but he strutted like a sheriff. I laid out my case calmly, showed photos of identical trellises down the street. Karen didn't even look at them. She waved her hand and said, "Rules are rules, Mr. Hayes. If you can't comply, perhaps this isn't the right community for you." That's when Emily stood up for me. "My daughter's 20, fiery, and not one to back down. You're targeting my dad because you think you can push him around," she said. "He's done more for this country than you ever will." The room went dead silent. Karen's lips tightened into a thin smile. Benson leaned across the table and muttered, "Careful, little girl. You don't want to make enemies here." I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, Emily came home shaken. She'd been walking the dog when a black SUV rolled up. 4 men stepped out wearing tactical vests with HOA compliance patched across the chest. They weren't cops, but they wanted her to think they were. One shoved her shoulder. Another barked, "Tell your dad the trellis comes down, or next time it won't just be a warning." My blood ran cold. Assaulting my daughter on my property? That wasn't just HOA harassment, that was a crime. Under 18 U.S. Code 912, impersonating a federal officer is illegal. And under state law, what they did to Emily was battery, plain and simple. I tucked her behind me, stepped forward, and locked eyes with the one holding the SUV door. My SEAL training clicked in like muscle memory. I sized them up, 4 men, sloppy stances, hands too close to their belts. Pretenders, not professionals. I told Emily to call 911. Then I said calm and low, "You boys picked the wrong house." The tallest of the 4 stepped closer, puffing out his chest like a brawler from a cheap bar. His vest read, HOA Compliance Unit, letters crooked like they'd been ironed on in someone's garage. He jabbed a finger toward Emily. "You think your little princess can cry to daddy and get away with ignoring our orders?" He sneered. I could feel Emily's hand tighten on my arm, but I just looked him in the eyes and smiled. A SEAL smile. The kind that said I'd been in worse spots than this and walked away every time. The first guy swung, a wild haymaker, telegraphed a mile out. I ducked under, hooked his arm, and dropped him with a shoulder throw that slammed him flat onto the gravel. He stayed down, groaning. Number 2 tried to rush me, arms out like a linebacker. Bad move. I pivoted sideways, planted my elbow in his ribs, then grabbed his vest strap and drove him face first into the SUV hood. He yelped, coughing, the fight knocked out of him. The third one pulled a baton. Cheap plastic, not police issue. He swung down, but I caught his wrist midair, twisted, and snapped his grip open. The baton clattered to the ground, and I answered with a straight palm strike to his chest. He staggered back and crumpled. That left the fourth. He hesitated, eyes flicking from his fallen buddies to Emily holding her phone up, recording every second. I stepped toward him slowly, controlled, and said, "You've got 2 choices. Drop the act and walk away, or keep pretending you're law enforcement and spend the night in a real jail." He froze, then bolted into the driver's seat of the SUV. Tires squealed as he sped off, leaving his buddies rolling on my driveway. Emily whispered, "Dad, you just took down 4 men like it was nothing." I put a hand on her shoulder. Because they weren't trained. They wanted to scare us, not fight us. But impersonating cops? That's a felony. And I was right. Under 18 U.S. Code 912, impersonating an officer can earn up to 3 years in prison. Add in simple battery charges for shoving Emily, plus trespassing on private property, and their little intimidation stunt just turned into a criminal record. By the time the real deputies rolled up, 2 of the imposters were still moaning on the ground. Emily handed over the video. I gave my statement, and I could already see Benson and Karen's fingerprints all over this scheme. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. The deputies cuffed the 3 men who hadn't managed to crawl away, reading them their rights. One deputy turned to me and asked quietly, "Sir, did you really do this alone?" I just shrugged. Old habits die hard. But I wasn't finished. The fight on my driveway was just the beginning. Karen and her little army had declared war on my family, and I intended to finish it. The deputies didn't even have to press hard. The three men sang like canaries the moment they were separated. One tried to play tough, but the bruises on his ribs had him wincing with every breath. Another kept whining about how Karen promised we wouldn't get caught. I leaned against the porch rail, arms crossed, watching it unfold. Emily stood beside me, still clutching her phone like it was a shield. She had the evidence that tied it all together. Deputy Morales came back over, notebook in hand. "Mr. Daniels," he said, "you were right. These guys aren't cops, not even close. They admitted HOA President Karen Benson hired them. Said she wanted to teach you a lesson." Emily scoffed. "She wanted them to put their hands on me." "That's not a lesson, that's assault." Morales nodded grimly. "And it won't sit lightly in court. Here's the thing. Under Texas Penal Code 22.01, assault against a minor is punishable by up to a year in jail and heavy fines. Combine that with 18 U.S. Code 912 for impersonating federal officers and Texas Penal Code 3005 for criminal trespass, and Karen's little intimidation squad was staring down decades of combined prison time. But the real shock came 30 minutes later when the deputies rolled up to Karen's pristine two-story house with lights flashing. Neighbors peeked from windows as the HOA president herself was led out in cuffs, still barking excuses. "This is a misunderstanding. I was protecting the community. He's dangerous. He's military," she shrieked, pointing in my direction even as she was shoved into the back of a cruiser. Emily held my phone steady, recording every second. "Dangerous?" she muttered. "The only danger around here was her." The neighborhood gossip mill exploded within hours. Phones buzzed, group chats lit up, and by nightfall, the entire street knew Karen had been arrested for hiring fake cops to rough up a teenage girl. The HOA board convened an emergency vote the next day. Karen was removed as president unanimously. No speeches, no debate. Her empire of petty fines and threats crumbled in less than 5 minutes. As for the enforcers, the DA charged them with impersonating officers, trespassing, and assault. At their arraignment, they looked like scared schoolboys instead of the tough guys who swaggered onto my ranch the day before. Emily asked me later, "Dad, do you think Karen will really go to jail?" I looked her straight in the eye. Actions have consequences. She wanted a war, and she forgot who she was up against. The law doesn't bend just because you're HOA president. Her charges were conspiracy to commit assault because she directed those men to attack Emily, Texas Penal Code 22.02. Solicitation of impersonation of a public servant, a felony under federal law, 18 U.S. Code 9112. Criminal trespass, sending them onto private land without consent, Texas Penal Code 30.05. Misuse of emergency services for her bogus 911 claims about dangerous activity, Texas Penal Code 42.061. I sat on the porch again, same chair, same view of the land I'd fought to protect. Emily sat beside me, safe. That was all that mattered. Karen had tried to break us. Instead, she broke herself.